Hey everyone, it's Barb Egan with Therapy Talks. And on today's show, we have Christine Champagne, who is a former military professional turned mom. And she talks about her journey into motherhood, her struggle with postpartum depression and anxiety, and how she's channeled that into create the SuperMom and Training Summit to help get moms the information they need without having to Google everything during those nighttime feedings. She has 32 specialists coming on to share at the summit, from dietitians and nutritionists, pediatricians to therapists, and talking about maternal mental health. We talk today's show on baby blues, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and what mental health care and support can look like in motherhood, especially like asking for help or accepting help, and what good mental health care tips can be for new moms, especially. Well, Christine, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, other than a mom, because that's something we have in common and kind of our biggest roles in life, which is really exciting, tell us more about you. Tell us about your story, kind of what you're doing, what you want to talk on today.
Yeah. So, like you said, first and foremost, I am a mom. And growing up, I feel like I always wanted to be a mom. I remember like this odd idea of like wanting 8 kids. Like that's all I remember. And then that kind of faded until I got pregnant. And I'm like, right, I wanted 8 kids. So this is one of like future kids. And my husband's on board, so we're good. No. But yeah, so professionally, I'm actually in the military.
Cool.
And that's like something that taught me a lot on like organization, time management, and just like a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't think that the military could teach someone.
Yeah.
Like I learned a lot, even mentorship and just everything. And so when I was pregnant, I just thought pregnancy was going to be like amazing. Like I didn't have big symptoms. I'm like, yay, just go with the flow. I think like emotionally, I was just like on that high.
Yeah.
And so when I had my baby, things kind of like went very rocky. I had ended up getting postpartum depression, anxiety, and I didn't realize it. Like I could feel something was off and I didn't want to admit it. I was just so angry. And like the labor was amazing, but it was like within the first few hours, all of a sudden, like I didn't want to bond with my baby almost, like nothing was going as planned. And then it took a week, I think, until my husband started to develop the perinatal mood disorders that dads can have.
Right.
So sleepless nights just like destroyed him. And we were like 4 months of just like possibly going towards maybe a divorce. Like I have no idea. It was just really awful 4 months. Like my baby had like latching issues. I had DMERS, which is like an emotional, like negative emotion with letdown. Just everything was painful. I did not know who I was. And being that, like yourself, I grew up being an athlete. Like I wasn't pro, but I had that mentality that I wanted to be a pro football player because I played football with guys. And like I was drilled and I was like disciplined and nothing seemed to be going right. Like I wanted to be intentional with my time, productive, and I just felt busy and lazy at the same time.
Right. That's a good way to describe it. I've never heard it said like that, but it is.
Yeah. And so I remember myself just sitting on the couch and like not wanting to move.
Yeah.
And so realizing at 4 months, which seemed like a veil was lifted, at 4 months, all of a sudden, like the latch was amazing. Because I was exclusively pumping and then I would try here and there to breastfeed.
Yeah.
And then one day the latch just like magically healed itself.
Wow.
And my body wasn't hurting anymore. And my brain just like lifted whatever this fog was. And I'm like, okay, like I can't just sit at his door hoping that he's going to sleep, because I didn't have a baby monitor, because I was afraid I would just keep it with me all the time. So I ended up just sitting at his door instead and doing nothing.
Right.
And so long story short, that is what inspired me to come up with something to make myself productive. And then at the same time, it birthed this super big idea of the SuperMom in Training Summit. Mm-hmm. And so I like went online, because that's what I do. I just like throw myself into things, and that kind of like not numbs me, but it makes me focus so much that sometimes I forget that I'm sad.
Right. So, yeah. Or you channel that focus into something productive or something that brings that part of you alive again.
Exactly. And so I just threw myself into like this online marketing course. And like, it was teaching about branding. It was teaching about like new ways of attracting people online. And I'm like, cool. I don't know what to do with this, but okay. And then I ended up meeting someone who like specializes in summits, and with the ideas that I created in my head and the summit idea. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I collected everyone that I thought were amazing, and that those initial people that I really wanted to help me when I was pregnant, when I was going through all of that, what if I just invited them and see if they want to like participate and help other moms do it?
Yeah.
And so I didn't get all of the people I initially wanted, but that just led me to even more people that I didn't even know existed. Wow. So yeah, that is in a nutshell how I ended up creating the SuperMom in Training Summit, which officially has 32 speakers, with like bonus speakers that aren't actually like famous. They're no one. They're just people that I randomly found. And I'm like, you have amazing value, please share. And so they're not counted as speakers, just bonus content. But yeah, and I just found people that in the end, if it helps one person, then I did my job. Mm-hmm. Like, it's expensive for me to run this, but like as long as I'm helping someone. And one of my speakers even said it, like, you might just be helping one mom, but you're not just helping her, you're helping her and the legacy that she's going to bring to her kids, her nieces and nephews, the friends that she might now share this information with. And I'm like, it makes me feel better, because as this is like the first official big project that I'm doing, which won't be the last, but as the first one, I'm like, we're always a little nervous that it's
sure, like, yeah,
it's a little hit or miss, but I'm like, hey, if this is going to help at least one person, I did my job.
Yeah. So tell us about the speakers lined up. I heard you have a really good therapist coming on.
Are you trying to name drop? Well, since you brought it up,
I want to hear from other people too. Oh man, no, I'm so excited to be a part of it. I'm so honored. I love what you're doing. I wish I had that as a mom too, and we can dive into that a little bit later. But yeah, tell us the types of people, like, because the phrase "it takes a village," and we often think that's around just a baby, which we need lots of help. Yep. Amen to that. But to come around a mom too, because yeah, one of the things that I know that I shared in what's going to be on the summit is this birth of a mother, this idea that we don't just have the birth of a baby, we have the birth of a mother, a brand new identity and transformation. And that's a huge psychological phenomenon that we're working through. And when I work with moms in perinatal and postpartum mental health care, we see so much of, and I can read about it, I can research it, I can be a mental health professional in it, but I'm a mom and I experience that. And it's really hard. And so that village around a mom of support is huge. I love that it's online too, because as much as it's great to be in person and that co-regulation of humans, I think it's really awesome. practicality, again, as a mom, it's sometimes just really easy to watch online or to listen to, or, be nursing or on a walk. And then, like you said, you have 32 speakers? Like, these people are from all over. To get us all in one location and venue is crazy logistical. It just opens it up for the speakers. It opens it up for the moms to help. And I love it. So tell us more about it.
Yeah. So the original idea, which I'm pretty close to the original idea, was to have a third for pregnancy and childbirth, a third for newborn, infant, and then a third for motherhood, which I'm pretty close to like that. I don't have the exact numbers just because like there's certain topics that you're like, oh, well, it could fit in all three or just like
Right.
here and there. But like when we're talking about childbirth, everything that was mentioned in the interviews for childbirth can be super valuable for people who already gave birth too. Because if they want another baby, or just even the mental lessons that are taught are super valuable. Mm-hmm. And so I have, in that realm, I have someone who's a doula, I have a midwife, I have a physician. So I'm like, I covered almost like it's all awesome. Three of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, if you're someone who believes in a hospital birth, well, we got you. If you're like someone who's like, I want home birth, we got you.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, like there's even like, I have someone who's talking about if you end up having food aversions during pregnancy, like how to cope with that. So like she's a vegan, but a lot of times, like all of a sudden you can't eat dairy. Some people can't eat dairy. Right. Some people can't eat fish. My mom was violently sick when she was eating meat. Wow. When she was pregnant. So I'm like, this, at least, you can get the protein, the calciums, the omega-3. Right. And I'm like, you got this. Like, she'll talk about that. We even have someone who covers pregnancy and postpartum fitness. Yeah. So we're talking about like the common things that happen with your core, your pelvic floor, how to recover from a C-section, a vaginal birth, like that's being covered there. When we're talking about the baby specifically, all of a sudden, like there's a wide variety of people talking there. Initially, I wanted everyone to be females, but we do have a male pediatrician. He's a dad, but cool. he works. But yeah, like he talks about like everything that you might want to know from a pediatrician. And what's awesome is that when he's going to be doing his live Q&A, there's going to be people asking him more things about like what a pediatrician wants you to know, right? Mm-hmm. We have, let's see, pediatric dentist.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so like she's one of the people that you wouldn't think of when you're thinking baby. But then again, like the information she shares, most people don't even realize it until it might be too late. Mm-hmm. And so like, I think without knowing it, like she was like the major person that needs to be on the summit, because for me, I had like experiences that if I would have seen this, I think a lot of stress would have been relieved right off the bat. And now like with a baby who's growing a 7th tooth, I'm like, please tell me more about this.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's so much more. We have like sleep consultants, we have occupational therapists for babies, we have let's see, we're going to have like feeding experts that are like lactation consultants, but also cover other topics too, like bonding or like formula, going back to work. We have in motherhood, we have a whole wide range of like people talking about motherhood. The psychologists, I believe you were one of 3 or one of 2. I can't remember how many psychologists, but
get more of us. We all need help, especially as a mom. I just think as you're talking about all these things, I'm like, when I'm on someone's care team or I spearhead their postpartum mental health or even prepping for baby, I work with all of those: doula, midwife, OB, pediatrician, GP, registered dietitians, sleep consultants, lactation consultants, all of those, because again, it takes a village, but permeating all of those things is mental health. And the lack of sleep, or the odd hours, the strain on a marriage or a relationship and partnership can be huge. It just permeates everything's harder on little sleep too. And then you have this idea, I think the books or movies like show us this idea of pregnancy, and then the stereotypical like childbirth is terrible. And then the sleepless nights of an early baby, or they show like in movies, just sleeping like a baby and all these things. So it's really conflicting images that as humans, if we all have these core beliefs of, am I doing the right thing? I'm not good enough. That's a big core belief that people come into my office with. I just don't feel good enough in some ways. And maybe that prevents you from bonding or attachment, which in psychology, we use a lot of attachment theory, especially in relationships, whether that's couples or families, motherhood, bonding, making eye contact, physical touch, those sort of things are huge. And so I guess when you're seeing these different people come and speak, and you're thinking about even how mental health plays a part of it. I mean, May, Mental Health Month, Mother's Day. What do you notice, and from your own experience?
Well, I can say that I'm happy that all these speakers have some sort of experience with movies completely lying to them.
Yeah.
And I love that they're all trying to normalize the experience.
Yeah.
Like the big thing, like sometimes I have like predetermined questions in my head of like, oh, I'd love to ask this, but then they take it in such a different direction that all of a sudden I'm like, I never realized this, and you were an amazing speaker because you made sure to like point out to the moms who are going to be watching that it's okay that you're angry. It's okay that you're frustrated. Like these are emotions that are completely normal. And here's what you can do to help yourself, help your partner, help your baby. Here's what you can do to create that support that you need.
Yeah.
And so like we have people, and this is why like the childbirth speakers are super important to watch, even though you already had a baby, because they cover things that you probably wouldn't think of when you have a baby. Like they're going to be covering just like that list of things. Like I think the physician talks about like if you have a C-section, make sure you know that someone's going to be walking your dog, like something as simple as that, right? And so every speaker covers super important details that if you didn't watch this one interview, then that's probably something that you wouldn't have realized. No, I don't know if that made sense. I feel like my mom brain connected two sentences together.
But I think that's just the premise of taking one thing off your plate or starting with something. And I want to go back to the frustration, the irritability that moms face, because again, the books or the movies portray this blissful newborn period. And there's that, absolutely. There's beautiful. And I remember, and, I have 3 kids. We're going to welcome our 4th here soon. So I'm going to tune into all the childbirth stuff again. But, you can have those rocking a baby and watching them sleep, and the sighs and the rise and fall of their chest and the sleepy sighs. And it's amazing. And I remember I would have to write those down. Like I was trying to be really intentional with those moments that it's because it's amazing what you forget or snap pictures of to go back to and reflect on, because it's so easy to be so tired or so busy or distracted, irritable. So that one is a huge one that a lot of moms face. And we need to talk about it. We need to normalize it to get support, because we can't just ignore our way through it. It's just going to come up. And more often than not, irritability, short fuse, frustration, everything's worse on a lack of sleep, but that often can point to something bigger, like postpartum depression. Postpartum anxiety is a big one that we're talking about. For a long time, it was just known as postpartum depression. They're actually 2 separate things. There's overlap, absolutely. But there's some big things amongst like baby blues, which I think the statistics say like 80% of women feel, probably higher, let's be honest. But that could be, your hormones are so out of whack or readjusting. So this makes sense because some of the symptoms are just weeping or crying for seemingly no reason at all. Just not really feeling like yourself, or this isn't me, which again, now we're calling it, or what I like to call it, is this identity transformation of the birth of a mother. We're talking about, irritability, frustration, being impatient, just being restless. Like, what do I do? Am I doing it right? Sadness, mood changes, tired, anxiety, difficulty concentrating, brain fog. It can feel like you're not fully yourself or fully present, basically, in a wrapped up. That's baby blues. Those are really some go-to symptoms. Again, I think most women probably feel that way. So if you're a listener and you felt that way, maybe we're putting some words to it, or you're going through it, I want to normalize that and to reach out for help and support, whether that's, one of your friends, a little bit older mom who's been there. Maybe her kid's just a few months older or a year older, a couple, someone who's walked through that. And you don't really want to go to those people who remember it, the grass is greener. You want the realistic people that can repaint that green grass picture, yes, but who are not going to dismiss your experience or say, well, my baby slept perfectly or whatever. And sometimes we have easy babies. Mine were not. So good for you if you did. That's amazing. I wish that on everyone. But just differentiating. And then when we see postpartum depression, there's a lot more time frame of that. Baby blues, about 2 weeks or so. Again, these are rough timelines. I think it's longer. That's a personal opinion. Postpartum depression really is longer than 2 weeks. So it's those symptoms longer than 2 weeks, difficulty sleeping, insomnia, and exhaustion, which is like a terrible mix. Like, you're exhausted, but you can't sleep. Maybe your mind is racing, which again is a symptom of postpartum anxiety too. Lack of energy, low libido, just changes in sleep, appetite, energy levels, that sort of thing. Just again, that excessive worry, the weepiness is still there, crying for no reason. That's a big one. When our emotions and our hormones are so out of whack, it kind of spills over in different ways of irritability or crying or shutting down, isolation, difficulty bonding like you experience, because you're tapped out. Your capacity is tapped. You're feeling inadequate. That's a big one too. And then you add on the guilt, the sadness, the fear of, I'm doing it wrong, or I'm not a good mom, or I'm not cut out for this. Again, back to that core belief as humans that most of us struggle through is, I'm not blank enough. I'm not good enough. Maybe it's a fear of being alone too. And again, that just the anger, the irritability, the brain fog, difficulty concentrating, and those sort of things. And then again, it gets a little bit more severe when we have intrusive thoughts. These could be, what if I drop my baby? They can be something more intrusive like that. That's probably not really realistic. Or what if I just forget my baby in the car? I work with a lot of moms who have that. Now, it doesn't mean that's ever happened, nor will it happen, but they have this intrusive thought, this worry that's really captivating them. Or it's this fear or worry about harming the baby. That's usually a sign that, okay, we need to really get some intervention or the support team around us, and just kind of check in there and work through that. But there's, if we separate baby blues, which again, research tells about 80% of women experience those first 2 weeks, and then anything longer than that, if we're still experiencing that and it's interfering with our daily functioning and enjoyment of motherhood, and that's usually more around postpartum depression within that first year. Those are really loose definitions, if I'm being honest. And again, they're helpful. We have one diagnostic tool that we use to diagnose postpartum depression, the Edinburgh scale. But again, it's really about relating and sitting with and counseling, or just support in general, family support, social support, getting out of your house, having breaks, I think are some of the biggest tools to combating some of those experiences, especially as you become a mom and making these new identities and getting that rhythm for your mental health.
And yeah, like one of the big things that the speakers in the summit, that's what they're doing. They're making sure that the moms realize they have permission, one, to have emotions, to make mistakes, to do it their own way. Like Instagram is like the bathroom wall. Like you have everything in there, right? You can't just see, let's say, like someone's beautiful house and you're like, oh my gosh, that's reality. No, it's not. Like, right. I'm sure behind the camera it's terrible. Or like, this is my nighttime routine. Like that just causes more anxiety. I don't know why I thought I had to like respect whatever nighttime routine I spotted like on Instagram, or like the sleep schedules on Instagram. Like babies aren't robots. I'm not a robot. Like everyone's different. Like as you were a pro athlete, as like someone who's also done sports, if a move doesn't work for you and you know that it doesn't work for you, like you're going to modify it slightly. So why is it that we see like this thing and we're like, oh, it must be the only way to do this. It must be the only way to parent. And that just causes added stress for no reason. And like, it makes you feel super guilty of like, oh, I must be messing up. Like this person doesn't have a baby that cries. Like
what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my baby? Yeah,
exactly. Like, and for the past 2 days, like my baby was like amazing. And I'm like, awesome. And then today he like, we don't have blackout curtains. We should probably do that because the sun just like hits his bedroom at 7 a.m. and like he gets crazy. And so like, I just like tried to feed him back to sleep. And then my husband let us sleep until 9:30 by accident.
Yeah.
And so that just threw off the entire day. His 10 o'clock nap became 5 minutes instead of 2 hours. He was still awake by 12:30. And then he woke up at 1. And I'm like, well, that is down the drain.
Yeah. One of those days. Yeah.
And yeah, like motherhood is a day at a time. There's just, we can prepare as much as we can, but there's always going to be like those days where like I feel sometimes a little frustrated again, like at my baby or my husband.
Yeah.
And I can feel guilty about feeling those things because like all of a sudden I have this idea that I have to do something else. Now, the fact that I am planning a summit, I'm like, I do have a deadline, my little darling, please sleep.
Right.
But most of us, like the dishes, like you don't need a deadline on doing the dishes. Mm-hmm. You don't need the deadline on like walking the dog at this specific instance. And I think that's a lot of things that, especially in North America, we were just maybe taught that everything needs to be done like almost like a drill sergeant. I don't know, like
speaking from a military perspective, yes, the routine, absolutely. And I think in terms, so we talked about a little bit baby blues, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, that's really rooted in it. And that wasn't really even a word when I first had mine about 6 years ago that anybody talked to me about. But I know myself and I know those words that I use, and I would never say that to someone. Like my sister-in-law just had a baby last night and I'm so excited for her. I would never say something like that to her, that your baby needs to sleep at this time. Da, 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 da. But for myself with my first, that's me. That was me. It was a lot of work to kind of ease up a little bit on my second and third. Absolutely. But I think life forced me to, because I was so rigid. I was so routine, which again is a huge symptom of postpartum anxiety, is being, I have to stick to the schedule where, yes, routine, and this is a fine line, because routine and sleep schedules as humans, especially children, do really, really well on schedules. But we can't be so rigid that we're so tight and tightly coiled and wound up about it, because that will drive you crazy. And so when you're very rigid about a sleep routine, sometimes that can be a postpartum anxiety symptom. It can feel like everything needs to be done right now. The dishes, like I see it and I have to do it. It's compulsory. I have to, those big words, I have to, I need to, I should, all of those types of words that we see with anxiety type thinking, that dichotomy type thinking or big style thinking of big definitive words, never, everybody always, nobody else has experienced this, everybody else can do this. That's usually a good symptom that maybe we need some support or to reach out. But again, postpartum anxiety can be really physical in us too. It can just be that wound up sensation in our body, your jaws clenched really tight, tightness in your chest, beating heart, difficulty concentrating, just not, again, feeling like yourself, or you're exhausted because you're a new mom or you're in that first year, especially, but you can't fall asleep. You can't turn off your brain. And you could just have this constant sense of worry. Again, those intrusive thoughts, or worry that something bad's going to happen, or I'm not going to go anywhere. It's kind of keeping you isolated, not going to the library, not going to library time or mom's groups, which can be so great for social support, but it's actually perpetuating anxiety because you're isolated, you're alone, you're staying inside, you're not really going out and doing anything. More often than not, that makes anxiety, or especially overall mental health in that postpartum period, worse.
Mm-hmm. And I had like 100% like postpartum anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can just remember a few specific events. Like I don't think I had a picture with like me with my baby until he was 2 months old.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was smiling in any of the pictures until 4 months.
Yeah.
I remember like I was so attached to that schedule, which again, like coming from someone who didn't even realize I was following their like suggestions, remember, suggestions.
Right. Yeah.
Big word. But then all of a sudden you're like, this is it. Like, this is the prescription. It's not a prescription.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was following this idea of like, oh, he needs to be awake this amount of time, sleep this amount of time. Well, because he was syringe fed, he couldn't even latch on a bottle. Like the bottle nipple was too big for him.
Yeah.
So he's syringe fed, which takes an hour to feed a baby with a syringe. And so he was awake an hour with a syringe in his mouth, and then he would go to bed. And I'm like, I don't have time to go outside for a walk.
Right.
And that was just my interpretation. Like he could have just been in the stroller and we could have gone for a walk. But I never even conceived that idea. Like that was not even a possibility in my head. Like sunlight, I don't know what that was. I became the palest person during the summer. I'm like, but yeah.
Yeah. And so for new moms, or, at any stage, these are simple things that we can do to break through that. Because one, I just want to encourage you, I feel like we've all been there, or if you're listening, it's okay if you're there, or someone who's there. Maybe you're not, but someone who is, maybe your friend or your coworker, or your neighbor, or your sister, or someone, and to check in on them. And instead of saying, hey, what can I do? Or let me know if you need anything, say, hey, I'm going to come over and do some laundry for you. What would be a good time? Or, I'd love to drop off a meal. We don't even have to talk. I'll just leave it at your door. What's your favorite? Sometimes what I do is I just ask like their partner to say, hey, hypothetically speaking, what's so-and-so's favorite meal, and drop it off. And so there's no pressure to talk or come out, but it's just a little tangible way of comfort. Hey, you're not alone right now. You're being thought of. We want to nourish you. Like we need to eat too, and have physical food and things like that, because it is so again, kind of breaking it down: eat, sleep, get out of the house that feels comfortable to you. And if you need to, bring your friend, bring your husband, bring your partner, bring a family member, somebody to go with you if you need support for a while. You won't always, but just to go to the grocery store, or to go to a walk, or to go to a park, it will do wonders for your mental health to get out of your four walls. For me, it was really big to join moms groups. And so whether that's through a church, or a Facebook style group, or a stroller walking group, there's quite a few out there if you research it, or asking other moms who have gone before you, because chances are we'd love to share what our experience has been. And it's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies, and want to be a safe place for people, as this is becoming more normalized to talk about. Now, it is still very hard to talk about. I absolutely recognize that. But if you can kind of break it down to eating well, like we are what we eat, our gut's our second brain, kind of how we treat anxiety and depression normally, even more so postpartum or even pregnancy and perinatal mental health, because our hormones are all over the place. So be really kind to yourself. Reach out, social support, eating, social support, safe friends, other moms, maybe who have gone before you too, that you could get some wisdom and advice from. I had some older moms in my life who their kids weren't crazy older than mine, maybe a few months or even a year or two, who just gave me really great sound advice of, this too shall pass. That's a big one. But one was, you'll never regret holding your baby too much. You'll never look back and say, I held my baby too much, because he wouldn't sleep without being on me for naps. And so I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get stuff done or paperwork or dishes or anything. And I was really hard on myself, and I was really hard on that routine so that I could do these things. And when I kind of started to let that go a little bit and gave myself permission, I borrowed her words, I really enjoyed it a lot more. I was able to just kind of take a deep breath, and the rigidness, the tight coiling that I was able to just kind of relax just a little bit more. It didn't, make it go away overnight, but that was huge. So social support, finding a mantra that maybe really resonates with you. And it might be that, but it might be, it's okay to put down your baby and go do the dishes. Like, that's okay too. Absolutely. I actually had my neighbor tell me that. I was like, your baby's going to be fine for 10 minutes while you go shower. And so that was really helpful, just kind of giving yourself permission, especially someone who came from a very routine, I like to be an expert in things, which I became a mom and I was not an expert overnight. And that was so hard for me, because this little human, my son, he is so strong-willed and I love him so much, but he's his own personality. He's not me. He doesn't go by my rules all the time of, oh, I think you should have done it this way at sleeping or whatever. And he's so strong-willed, and I love that about him as I'm seeing him blossom into that personality. But it's just me giving myself permission. I think that was the big one too. So eating, social support, getting out, maybe some exercise if you can, asking for help, or delegating. If people are willing, say yes. Say yes. It's really hard. If somebody's willing to bring you a meal or help clean your house or just come over and be with you or go for a walk, say yes. And you'll start to figure out when to say yes, when to say no. But oftentimes when we isolate, that's when it makes all those other things worse.
And that actually kind of explains why I called the summit SuperMom in Training, because most people, when they think of SuperMom, they think of someone like a one-woman show. They think of that person that's almost like bottling everything up and controlling everything. And that's not my definition of SuperMom. Mm-hmm. My definition of SuperMom is someone who knows how to take care of herself, who knows how to ask for help. Because if you can do that yourself, then you can teach your kid to take care of themselves too. Yeah. Because I feel like there's a generation almost of people who were just taught this is how it's done, and you're like, okay. But then I feel like all of a sudden this generation is plagued with mental health issues, of anxiety, depression, everything else. And so self-care is a word that's being thrown out the window almost, because people are like, oh, well, self-care is the spa. No, self-care is actually just sitting down and doing something that helps you. It can actually, self-care can be doing your budget. Let's be real. A lot of people haven't looked at their money in so long, and the pandemic hit a lot of people in that sense. And it can just be connecting with the right people. If someone drains you, then that's not the right relationship for you.
Right.
Self-care can just be journaling, reading a book. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a romance book, because sometimes that makes you feel even worse. So just reading a self-development book, that can be self-care. Having a stronger relationship with your spouse can be self-care. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm SuperMom in Training is almost better than like my original title, which was going to be like the Empowered Mom Summit.
I
But
like both
again,
of those.
right? But empowered was like that, it's almost that word that people just use too much.
Right.
But that's what it was, like someone who understands that they are their first child. Like your baby, yes, you gave birth to your baby, but you are your first child. I can't remember who talked about this, like one of the interviews, someone talks about the oxygen mask. Like in an airplane, when there's an emergency, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before your kid, because when we're talking about like a dysregulated baby, well, if you're going crazy too, you're not going to help them.
No. Yeah. We have to bring the calm to them. Their big emotions. We have to be that calm, which can be so hard. And it's so much easier said than done. And we're not going to be perfect. But it is, that's a great, I love that. I use that quite a bit. And I need that reminder a lot too, is got to put my oxygen mask on first. And I use the term, empty cups cannot pour. We have to make sure we're getting, poured into, whether that's hanging out with friends or just time away too, of not just being a mom, that you can't just be 24/7 all consuming. We would never do that with a job as an accountant or as a counselor, or in the military. You need breaks throughout. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad mom. You could be a good mom and need a break too. Absolutely. Both are true simultaneously. And so I love what you said about the self-care piece, because that is pouring into us. Counseling can be that, listening to podcasts, watching a show. I remember my counselor when early on in those first few months was like, you know what you need to do just at the very end of the day, don't do any work, don't do any research, don't do anything to do with work, don't do anything cleaning. Read a novel or watch a funny show, like watch something that's escapism in a healthy way. Not, a counseling book or anything like that. And so I would watch like funny shows, and that was 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes that were just like, it was a good release for me. And laughter is so great when you're feeling these ways, because there's something about that release that just forces your body. I mean, if you think back to the last time you really laughed, oh, it feels so good. And in fact, I'm interested about the pediatric dentist, because so my sister-in-law just had a baby, and my kids were going, oh, do you think the baby's going to have teeth? Because my son has a wiggly tooth, so he's really into that right now. Oh, I wonder if the baby's going to be born with all the teeth and if one's going to be wiggly. And we just got this image of a baby being born with teeth, a whole set of teeth, and we were all laughing. And I was like, wow, that was so good. Like, it was just funny. It was just, it was a good release. But just something silly like that too can, funny YouTube videos or things like that they can be so good for the soul, so good for your mental health. That could be a way to pour into your cup, because moms keep pouring out. And the summit that you're putting on, you're so right. Empty cups cannot pour, but we continue to pour out, and it's that ripple effect too. It's not just your child. Of course, that is your calling right now. Like, you are going to influence this child's life more than any other person on the planet. What an honor that is. But then that child, or your family, or your marriage, or you as an individual, if you bump into someone at a coffee shop or at your workplace, a colleague, a friend, a family member, a cousin, an acquaintance, those ripple effects go a long way. And when that baby grows up, that's going to grow into, that ripple effect's going to go into a classroom and friend circles and sports teams. And long after just you and that baby in those early years, you're doing important work. And honestly, that's one of the mantras that I encourage moms and use myself to, and of just, the laundry or cooking or cleaning dishes or just rocking back and forth, trying to get back to nap or anything like that. This is important. This is important. This is important. And it is really grounding for me. And it doesn't work perfectly every time, but it's something that I hold on to. So I encourage people to find something, like you said, social media can be really good, can not be so really good, but there's some people on there that can be really life-giving to hold on to, or certain mantras or tips or things that you don't exasperate maybe negative symptoms in your life, but and really positive and give you permission and joy back to it. And mostly the most important part is just being present. Your kids want you to be present. They want to know that they mean the world to you, that it's, you're not on your phone or computer, that this thing is more important and you're multitasking, but, and having good boundaries. And that's kind of back to that, having breaks too, even more of a reason not to do it all. SuperMom is, when people say that to me, I'm like, far from it. I have crying days. I have lots of help. I ask for it too, or I delegate. And more so, it's people that I respect, or my own counselor too, of just saying, where can I put good boundaries up? So first and foremost, I can be a mom and be so present and be the mom my kids need, because I'm handpicked to be their mom, nobody else. And what an honor. And that's true for all of our listeners too. Like, you're handpicked to be your kid's mom, and to just protect that, put boundaries in place to protect that. So then work or cleaning or whatever, you get that time if it's really important and needed. But that's, get your priorities of being able to be present first. And that being present is the most important thing.
Oh yeah. And when, I feel like a lot of moms try to be so present that they also forget that they're allowed to have boundaries with their own kids too.
Yeah. I think in order to be present, you actually need boundaries or breaks. Mm-hmm. So presence and breaks go together. Yeah. I actually feel so much better when I come recharged back. And for me, that's often my work. I don't work crazy hours. I work during mostly nap and bedtimes for that reason, so that I get a break, I get recharged, that other part of me comes alive, that I'm not just mom mode all the time, but then you get to come back into that and be more present because of that break, not of go, 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 go.
Mm-hmm. And to almost bring it back to self-care, there's that phrase that's always thrown out there of sleep when the baby sleeps, mm-hmm. which is great in theory, only if, and there's two cases, I think, that are major issues that most people think that it's a terrible advice, because it doesn't actually tell you what to do. Unless you have a good sleeper, you can't really necessarily sleep when they sleep. Yeah. There's some people that their baby only sleeps when they're on them in the car, in the stroller. So that phrase itself almost causes anxiety for those people.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have the other people where their brains can't shut off and they're always go, go, go.
That was me.
Right? It's baby's down, gotta do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so that's almost having that boundary of okay, figure, if that sentence is triggering for some people, don't accept the sentence.
Yeah,
it's probably bad advice for some, because mm-hmm. you are a special circumstance, and you're probably actually more of the majority than a special circumstance. You're not the ideal circumstance. And that's what parenting is. Everyone's different. Mm-hmm. Everyone has their own journey. Mm-hmm. And it's 100% about giving yourself permission, setting social boundaries. If you're not having it with unsolicited advice, just
yeah,
you can shut it down.
Yeah. Have some boundaries there. Absolutely. Because it's amazing when you have a baby or pregnancy, just people think they can share their opinion and that you want it. Or most of the time, I don't. Most of the time, nobody wants it, to be honest. Unless you tell a woman, you look amazing, how are you feeling? Those sorts of things, uplift people, leave people better than you found them. It's not about you. Don't share that opinion stuff. It can be really sticky.
Don't talk about our bodies. We don't need that. We don't need to know how big we look. We don't need to know how thin we look. Yeah. It can trigger people on both sides. Don't do it.
Yeah. 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 I had a person come up to me, I'm halfway through, and this is my fourth. So I'm sure I show so much earlier and, all of that. And she was like, wow, are you close to your due date? You look huge. And I was just like, no, I've actually got halfway to go, and I'm only going to get bigger. And it's just you have to add humor to certain things like that. Otherwise, without rigidness or anything, it would just eat away at your mental well-being, and just having a space where you can laugh about it and let it go. And again, having those positive inputs are so important and vital of just building up moms, pouring into your cup. Empty cups cannot pour.
100%. It's, I was like, sorry, my brain is like being hit by the mom brain at the moment.
So Christine, where can our listeners find the summit? How can they, partake in it? If they, just, this is an awesome resource. Tell us where we can find it.
Yes. So the website itself is www.train-a-mom.com. So trainamom.com.
Okay.
I thought it was catchy. So I'm like, that's cute.
Yeah. Trainamom.com. Good.
With dashes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the event is going to be like on that website. You're going to be getting daily emails with the links to all the interviews. And then the Q&As are going to be done in the summit Facebook group. So like the speaker and I are going to be like on Zoom, and we're going to be broadcasting that into the group, because some people don't use Zoom and some people don't use Facebook. So that is also going to end up back on the website at some point too.
Cool.
And so it's
so someone can listen to these, but they can also ask specific speakers live questions.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so we're going to have that schedule done up next week or so. And so if you sign up now, you'll get all the emails with all the details to explain how things are going to happen. And then if you join the Facebook group, that is exactly where you're going to find all the details. And yeah, you'll find all the Facebook the Q&As are going to happen there. The speakers are just going to live in the group. So if there's random questions, maybe they can answer as they go. They'll collect those questions, answer them live whenever their actual Q&A date is. And yeah.
Cool. So how would someone search for the Facebook group?
So it is like when you sign up on train-mom.com,
Mm-hmm.
you do get an email that tells you
wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that link.
So the website. Okay.
But the Facebook group itself, if you just want to join there and then get the registration link in the group, it's called Motherhood Village.
Okay.
And hopefully it's easy to find. I haven't had someone go that route yet.
Okay, cool. So go to the website basically. Yeah. And how much is it?
So it's free.
Woo!
Yay. So every day there's 3 interviews. They're available for 24 hours because to run something this big for free is very expensive.
Right.
So you have 24 hours to watch the interviews, grab the gifts. If you do want lifetime access, there is a VIP ticket available at the moment because the summit's not there yet. We do have an early bird special on the ticket prices. And then prices are back to normal during the summit. I don't know when this is going to air, so I'm not going to necessarily mention the prices yet. Okay. Is it going to air before Mother's Day? I don't know.
I'm not sure. So we'll just go with trainamom.com with the dashes in between, that we can find you. Are you on social media too? Or is the summit? Okay. Yeah. How do we find you there?
So on Instagram, there's 2 pages. So my personal page, at motherhood.foundations.
Okay.
And then on the summit page, the summit page is at train.a.mom.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So our listeners can go follow you on Instagram and follow along with the summit. Go to the website to click in and get on in the Facebook group as well. And just, be able to see those speakers. There's 32, which is amazing that you can pick what you want to watch and even then have the ability to go purchase an early bird ticket or a VIP ticket to ask some live Q&A questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I'm super excited about the summit because it's going to be jam-packed with a lot of things that most people don't even think about.
Right.
And so I've noticed that there's parents in the group that have older kids. So hopefully they're going to have like at least the motherhood part of things.
Yeah.
That will help, because the psychologists, the coaches, nutritionists, the fitness industry, like there's even people about like simplifying motherhood to the basic sense of just simplify your home.
Yeah.
And like productivity hacks and things like that. Like,
cool.
There's something for everyone. And hopefully everyone enjoys.
That's amazing. Well, Christine, thank you for coming on. Thank you for putting something like this on the summit, just your heart and using your story. I think that's such a powerful point of that, whatever our story, whatever our struggle, that usually becomes such a great impact that we can lean into. So thank you for doing that. This has literally been birthed out of a struggle. So thank you for your bravery and showing up and caring for your mental well-being. And this is a great avenue to channel that in. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.